Now, the old solutions were poor rural people have to be helped. We have to build toilets for them. And so there were engineering designs and toilets were built, and it didn't work. It hasn't worked well anywhere in the world. They're either not used, or they're dismantled, or they're used for other purposes, a lot of the time, often more than 50% not used. So the solution was build and teach. Community-led total sanitation turns all these things on their head. And if I was a bit younger, I might even stand on my head on the stage, but I won't do it because it also would waste time. But the point is that all the normal reflexes are turned on their head. There is no hardware subsidy. There is no engineering design. There is no teaching. There's only facilitating. Counting latrines built is not the main thing. The main thing is communities which declare themselves open defecation free. And instead of the polite word, we always use the word shit. And this, I'm very proud to show you, is an international glossary of shit. And if any of you can add words to this, please do later today. And if anyone wants to discuss this later, please do. But this gives an indication of how international this movement now is.
I'll pass that to the judges.
So can we go into the next?
Next slide.
Oh, I've got it here, haven't I? Right, this is just to show you the process. This is women who have made a map of their community, and they're using the yellow powder to show where the shit is. And it's all over the place. And as a result of doing this, they realize where the shit is. Then there's a transect. You go into the area where the shit, and you stand and you look at it, and you calculate how much different people produce and so on. And then that one. One of the things which was invented in India is bringing shit back and putting it down next to some food in the middle of the community. And you can see flies on there, and the flies dance backwards and forwards. And people are absolutely horrified by this. But it brings home in a very dramatic way the fact that, and this is what people say, we are eating one another's shit, and it's got to stop. And that's the moment of ignition, and a good facilitator will catch that, and it leads into a community taking action immediately. The last one I was at in Mali, they began digging the same day. They dig pit latrines the same day. So this is the moment of recognizing disgust. And this is people saying, we're going to stop. And it's dramatic and exciting, and there's usually a lot of laughter as well as horror. It shouldn't be going that way. And this is the point about convenience and pride, and it's particularly important with women. Having built their own latrine to their own design, not to an engineering design, and the whole community then declaring that it is open defecation free. So the drivers in this are disgust, pride, self-respect, and convenience. They're not so much health. We think it should be health, and of course health is there, and they recognize that. But these are not the actual drivers to action. This was invented 10 years ago by Kamal Kaur, an Indian working in Bangladesh. And in those 10 years since then, it has spread to over 40 countries. My estimate, after a lot of discounting, is that 10 million people, at least 10 million people, have already benefited from this. Women gain enormously, particularly in South Asia, because there's this terrible deprivation of having to go before dawn or after dark, with all the implications for women's health, which are so appalling. And having their own toilet means that they have privacy. there are knock-on effects with the Millennium Development Goals, with almost all of them, and particularly with nutrition. So the question is, can they do it? Can people do it? Yes, they can, and they've shown that they can. And can this go exponentially to scale as it is going exponentially to scale at the moment? Can it continue? There are problems, but I believe that it can. And I think that in 10 years' time, when we look back, we'll say, wow, that was the big one. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Robert. I got some of the biggest complaints of the year when I put shit in the editorial that accompanied an article about Robert's work. So there we go. We've used it in the BMJ. I'm sure we'll use it now. Over to you, Vivian.
I have absolutely no doubt at all that sanitation is something which is critically important to health. But my problem is that you haven't actually communicated to me what it is that you're actually doing. You've failed the 30-second elevator test or even the 10-minute BMJ test, because to understand what it is that you're... I understand the concept, but the actual means of delivery, how you're doing this, I haven't yet understood. And perhaps that's the reason why this isn't taking off as quickly and as rapidly as it deserves to.
But Robert can have another minute's attempt to convince you, Vivian. Give a minute.
It's the how.
You have to speak
it's
into
not the
microphone.
why it's important. I know why it's
how.
important. I want to know what it is that you're doing. How are you doing this? How are you rolling it out?
Yes.
What's the system for making it grow exponentially?
Governments are making this government policy. Ethiopia, Indonesia, Pakistan, I mean, a range of Sierra Leone are making it government policy. UNICEF is behind it. UNICEF used to be against it, but they're absolutely behind it now. The World Bank is behind it. So it's really, really got everything ready for going to scale.
But
there are problems. There are problems in going to scale, and we're wrestling with them, and we're learning, and we're learning, and we're learning, and we're communicating.
But Vivian,
I'm not telling you, do you want to know about the triggering?
Do you mean about the people on the ground, how it happens?
Yes, I mean,
More about what happens on the ground when you go into a village and you...
Okay. If you're the facilitator, there's a preparation beforehand. So the community comes together. You say, we've come to learn from you. We haven't come to teach you anything or to bring you anything. And then you facilitate mapping, which people usually really enjoy doing. And all the time, you're hands-off. It's very, very different from the traditional approaches of health extension. And health extension workers have a problem with it because they're in the teaching mode. So one of the things that's absolutely vital with this is a personal change. And that's quite difficult, but there are brilliant people. I mean, I met an Indian who said, I said, aren't you nervous? Because he was doing it with the top flight people in India. And he said, no. And I said, how many times have you done this? He said, oh, well over 300. And I said, don't you fear that it won't work sometime? He said, no, it always does. It's quite extraordinary. The only thing I can say is experience it for yourself, and you'll be astonished.
So Vivian, you can go out and watch one of these sessions. Instead of building loos, you go and talk to the people and find out what they want, I think is the message. But